Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. So in this episode, we are going to work on the Mark II's radiator. And I have the core popped out of the bag right here, ready for me to begin building the end tanks on it. So, as far as materials for the tanks are concerned, I bought some 1/8 inch thick, 2-inch wide aluminum strip from good old Lowe's, and that's what we're going to be using to craft the tanks out of. Now normally I use a little bit thinner material for this, but being that this car is designed to have the radiator be hard mounted to the chassis, I'd rather have a little bit thicker material being used for the tanks, so that way they're a little bit more robust and a little bit less likely to rupture. So this core is very close to the same size as the core that the radiator that was previously in the Mark II used. And it mounts via these two tabs on the upper core support, and then there's some lower tabs down there as well somewhere that I'll use to mount it down on the lower core support. But we're not overly concerned with mounting right now. My main concern is just getting the radiator, getting the tanks designed and fabbed and welded and all of that. So with this new radiator, I'm going to design it very similarly to the radiator that was on the car before. And that radiator is right here. So it's definitely a more old school style radiator. It definitely did its job fine and everything else. But when I was taking it apart, I kind of crunched the upper water neck a little bit. And between that and the fact that this is a steel radiator, I believe, I wanted to build something out of aluminum to make it a little bit lighter and able to do its job a little bit more effectively as a heat exchanger that way, as aluminum acts as a better heat sink and better heat dissipator than steel does. So we're going to use some material properties to our advantage in the design of this new radiator. So I'm going to try to mimic the tank designs as best I can with the new radiator. And, excuse me, although I don't have all of my materials here yet, I can at least get the form of this tank constructed, or the form of the tanks rather, and get them ready for holes to be drilled in them for all the different features to be added to them. So this top tank, you can see that it has a lower spot, higher spot where the fill neck and the upper water neck are. Kind of tapers down a little bit, down to gradually just about no height over on this side. The lower tank has a bit more height and a bit more dimension to it the whole way throughout. So I'll try to do the best that I can to do something similar to this with the new radiator, as if it worked for what was on there before. Don't try to reinvent the wheel, just do what works and move on with your day that way. So the first thing that I need to do is to cut 4 sheets or 4 strips to act as the side pieces for each of the tanks. So we need 1, 2 on top, 3, 4 on the bottom, and then once I have these cut out, then I can actually tailor the shape to suit what I'm trying to do and make everything work that way. I have my pieces cut for the sides of both of the radiator's tanks, and I showed this in the video building the intercooler for the Mark II, but didn't actually do an explanation of it. So let's do that now. So you can see this section, or these 2 pieces are labeled top, these 2 pieces are labeled bottom, and you can see that they are tacked together. So what I'm doing here is making mirror panels for both the top and the bottom. And if you take and cut your pieces to length and then tack them together, when you go and make your cuts to make the shapes of them, there's no guesswork involved to try to hand cut 2 pieces that fit the exact same and that are the exact same shape. If you have them tacked together, then as you make those cuts, you're cutting not only one, but two pieces, and there will be no difference and no variance between the two pieces that way. So this is the easiest way that I've found to do this without a CNC or like a CNC plasma table or laser, water jet, anything like that. You tack the pieces together, make your cuts, everything will be the same from side to side, and it just eliminates some of that guesswork. So at this point, what I can do is take these over to the old radiator, take some measurements, get some dimensions as to how I want these to be shaped, and then make my cuts and start working on the top portions of both the top and the bottom tanks. The Mark II's new radiator tanks are all welded up and ready to accept all of their accessories. So this is what I've ended up with. Pretty happy with the weld quality on them, and everything is welded the whole way around. And up here are all of the other materials to include the different features onto this radiator. So we have these 2.5 inch stubs that'll be the inlet and outlet for the radiator. I have this 1 3/4 90-degree bend that will be the fill neck, or that the fill neck will attach to. And then this number 10 ORB bung, and that black fitting right there, that's actually the new drain. So these are pretty cool. Vibrant offers these. They are a thread out deal like this. It has an NPT port in the middle of the knurled section right there. So you could attach a hose or something like that to it and be able to drain it in a little bit more directed fashion. But with all of these materials here now, I can go ahead and actually mark out on these tanks where everything is going to be located and start drilling holes, excuse me, and getting everything located so that way I can do the finish welding on the radiator. The Mark II now has a brand new aluminum radiator. So here is the finished product for it. And I built it to pretty closely mirror what was in the car before, just made out of aluminum and made with my own two hands. As you guys know, I have a bit of a complex with wanting to build everything myself, and this car and this part is no different. So the features, it's a fairly simple radiator. I built the tanks as simply and as cleanly as I could. Both of the tanks are 3 pieces, and the top side here we have our fill port, or the filler neck rather. It has a little bit of a bend going down to this upper tank, and I positioned the overflow fitting kind of shooting over this way, which is how it is positioned on the old radiator. So the rest of it's pretty self-explanatory. We have the upper water neck right here, lower water neck right here. We have this 10 ORB fitting bung down here, so that way it can act as the drain. And then of course I put a BPA logo on it because why not? So at this point the radiator is fabricated, welded, all of that, and the only thing left to do is to figure out how I'm going to mount it. Now, the upper portion is going to be fairly straightforward, as I have these 2 tabs on the upper core support that were used for the old radiator, and I'll use them for the new radiator as well. The lower section is going to be the little bit more difficult part, but shouldn't be anything out of the realm of possibility. I'll just have to do it a little bit differently than I was initially intending on, but that is not the end of the world, and everything will work out perfectly fine. It's now time to mount the radiator in the Mark II. So yesterday I got the hood put on the car to verify that the radiator will fit correctly, and it does, so all is well there. And I also went ahead and made the first of the radiator mount brackets, or the top brackets at least, right here. You can see this flat where my thumb is, that's what actually fastens the radiator to the car. And the 2 triangular wings are reinforcement gussets to prevent this mounting tab from being bent and broken off of the radiator. So this is mounted, or this is marked out rather, pretty much exactly where it needs to be, referencing the few permanent marker marks that are on here. And that bracket is ready to be tacked onto the radiator. So I'll do that first, so that way I have a good reference point and a good reference location to make sure the radiator ends up back in the same location in the car each time. As I'll build another bracket similar to this over on this side, and then I'll have to figure out what to do on the bottom side to retain the radiator in its position there. I have an idea of how I'd like to do this, but I will focus my efforts right now on building the other upper bracket, and then focus on the lower mounts or the lower retention system in a little bit. Mark II now has a completed radiator. So all of the mounting is done on it. Like I showed before, I did these nice little tabs with some triangular gussets and speed holes, and that can be said for both sides. Underneath, we have just these two simple tabs off the bottom of the radiator tying into the lower core support. So the radiator's hard mounted, it's nice and solid, and it is not going anywhere. So now that the coolant, or the radiator, the coolant heat exchanger is mounted, the next order of business will be to mount the intercooler. So like I showed before, the intercooler sits in this void down in here. It's already built and everything else sitting right here, minus the inlet and outlet stubs, which I'll put those on in the near future. But the next order of business will be actually mounting the intercooler. Once that's done, all of the heat exchanger work is completed, and or at least all the mounting, everything is put in place, I should say. And at that point, I can shift focus to actually building the intercooler tubes. Today is the day that the Mark II's intercooler is mounted. So I have the intercooler in the car, and it's leveled and centered and all of that. And I have a pretty good idea of how I'd like to mount this. And that is using these bolts, or these studs right here, that are actually used to attach the steel bumper to the chassis. So in looking around at this, I didn't have very many good options in terms of like existing fastener holes and things like that to be able to mount this. At least not to mount it rigidly and without having to drill holes and put rib nuts in and so on and so forth. So these studs here provide a really solid base and really solid thing to mount the intercooler to, and I don't have to drill new holes, don't have to put new threaded inserts in or anything like that. I'll just have to do a little bit of trickery and some cool bracketry to make this fit, but I like building cool brackets, so this is right up my alley and right in my wheelhouse. And just like that, the Mark II's intercooler is mounted, and another heat exchanger, another project or sub-project for this greater Mark II revival project is completed. So I could not be happier with the way that this came out. The way that it looks up front, I think, is just killer. And between the intercooler and the radiator, I'm very happy with the way that both of these heat exchangers came out. And I can't wait to continue working on this car. So these are two huge steps that have been taken in this episode. And I'm very, very excited that they are knocked out and that I can continue on with other portions of the project. So now that the intercooler is in place, I can go ahead and get the intercooler tubing knocked out. Now that the radiator is in place, I can get the radiator hoses finalized and the cooling system finalized. And I'll have to figure out what I'm going to do in terms of fans for it, but that is a bridge that I will cross in the near future. But with all of that being said, and two huge steps taken with this project, that will be about the end of this episode. So, thank you guys, as always, for tuning in, for coming on all these different journeys and adventures with me. And I could not be happier with the way that this car is coming back to life. And I'm very, very excited for the next upcoming steps on it, and very excited for what has already been accomplished with the car. And I hope that you guys are enjoying this revival process, as I know that I am, and it's bringing back a lot of good memories and having a lot of fun with it. But with all of that being said, and before I drone on forever, that will be the end of this episode. So as always, be sure to subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment, check out the website for manifolds, for merch, for all things good that way. And I will see you all in the next episode.